Break, any station, come in.
Yung breaker po, go ahead. 11 call sign, sir.
Thank you, sir. This is 4H1 EMQ po. This is EMQ from Amadeo Station, over.
Roger that. Acknowledge. This is Alpha Lima, Cavite Station on the mobile.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you give me update lang sa location mo, weather, and working condition mo?
Roger that. Acknowledge. So now, ako po ay on mobile, stationary mobile here in Cavite City Public Market. And then, sa ngayon, sobrang init po ng ating weather condition ngayon dito. Napakataas ng humidity level. And working condition ko po is Motorola GM300 with power output of 45 watts. And then, super gainer antenna. Over.
Magandang hapon po sa inyo muli mga ka-Try Nation. Ito na naman po ang inyong likod, si BB1 ng Try to Contact. Yan. So kamusta na po ba kayo dyan sa inyong mga kinalalagyan? Abay dito po sa ating kinalalagyan medyo mainit na po ng konti dito sa Silang Cavite. No? Mga 3 days na rin siguro na medyo mainit. Lalo na sa ganitong oras na tirik ang araw. Kaya nga hindi ako masyadong lumalabas kasi masisira na naman yung aking glass skin. Anyway, yan ano. At saka hindi po tayo pwedeng magpa-araw kasi baka lumutong tayo. Yan. O baka siguro kailangan ko munang magpahid ng lotion, ano, yung sarsa ni Mang Tomas. Yan. Anyway, yun po ano, kamusta na po kayo diyan sa inyong mga kinalalagyan? At welcome po again sa ating show. At marami po tayong mapag-uusapan ngayon, ano? Ayan, at hinihintay lang po natin yung ating mga resource person. Ayan, meron po tayong i-interviewin today and hopefully makapasok po siya, no? Ayan, medyo may challenge lang po ng konti doon sa kanyang end. And then hintayin din po natin si Sir W3ZQC dahilan sa pag-uusapan po natin ang mga formulas ng antena. Ayan, so kung kayo po ay gumagamit ng mga ham radio antenna katulad po nito, ayan, may antenna po dito. Ang tawag po dito ay telescopic. Ayan, so mamaya po, pag-uusapan natin ni Sir W3ZQZ kung ano pa yung mga formula ng mga antennas na ito. No? And then, ipapaliwanag niya rin sa atin kung paano ba gumawa. Ano, hopefully, matakil niya din yan. Ano? Kasi alam niyo, gusto natin ding mag-DIY. Ayan, so kayong mga DIY na mahilig gumawa ng antena, ayan, so watch out po kayo, no? Ayan, at ayan, nandiyan na po si Sir James W3ZQC. Ayan. At weather condition, yun nga po, medyo mainit. According to my, bumili talaga ako para makita ninyo. Ayan, no? Mga ka-try. Ayan, no? So dito po ngayon ay 27 degrees Celsius. Dito po sa ating kinalalagyan. At ang pinakamababa po kanina ay 24 degrees Celsius. Ayan. So doon naman po sa ating mga taga-probinsya sa Amerika, ngayon po ay 80 degrees Fahrenheit. At ang low po natin ay 76. Ayan. Dito po sa ating 20, syempre iba-iba po ng lugar at iba-iba po ng weather. Kamukha po doon sa probinsya namin sa California, medyo malamig po doon. Ano? Nag-30s yata ngayon doon o 40s. At nagne-negative pa nga yata dahilan dun sa probinsya naman namin sa Big Bear. Kaya, pagpasensyahan nyo na po. Ayan. Yun. So siguro unahin po natin ngayon si Sir W3ZQZ. Ayan, meron nandiyan na po siya. No? Ayan, so, teka muna. Asan na yung SOP? Teka lang ha. Yan. Oh. So may tissue na. Hindi na to tissue. Ayan. Hindi ko alam kung ano to pero nosebleed na naman po tayo mga kaibigan. Nandiyan na po si W3ZQZ, Sir James. So we're going to talk about the formulas of antennas. Ayan. So hindi po ito yung milk na formula ha na tinitimpla para sa bata. This is the formula of how to use the antennas. Ayan. So without further ado, let's call on our very own Sir James, Sir W3ZQZ. Please come in. Hello, Sir James.
Hey. Good afternoon there.
Good afternoon, my dear brother.
Okay, good
What's happening over there?
All right, man. Well, as promised, we have a couple treats for you guys. If I guess it depends on who's watching, if it's a treat or not. But
Mm-hmm.
so for us, as we're discussing last week, Joey, we're going to get into one or two formulas. We have a few, but just a little at a time.
Yep.
And uh, these are formulas that all amateur radio operators should know. Some basic formulas here in developing their antenna. For Class 3, a lot of times to go out and buy and hook up things, but uh, it won't hurt to know how we derive uh, with the again the given size of each antenna for a given frequency. So, but particularly when you get into HF, you're expected to, for sure, know these formulas, and also for the test as well. And um, a lot of quite a few amateur radio operators prefer, especially HF, to make their own antennas. So, as opposed to store bought, and custom made, and also the savings aside. So, I had asked you, and this is impromptu, to get your calculator earlier, Joel,
Yes.
and uh, just for our live viewing audience, we didn't um, rehearse this or anything. So, but
It's
just
okay.
um, to show um, fairly how easy it is to arrive at the uh, given lengths of a given frequency and so forth. So, as we had discussed in earlier episodes, uh, the HF band, we have the 80 meter, the 40 meter, 20, 15, 10. Those are the more common bands to operate generally. And the more popular band here, in the Philippines for HF, would be typically 40 meter or the 20 meter, or as many as the 7 megahertz and the 14 megahertz band. And so when you're coming up with the antennas, the most basic antenna that you have is a dipole antenna. I was going to ask you maybe to find a dipole diagram, and you can put it up so persons can visualize that uh, while I discuss that. But for the basic dipole here, you have a feeder of coaxial cable. Generally, it's center fed, and it is generally a half wavelength of the given frequency. So generally, um, the wavelength of 7 megahertz is 40 meters long. So half of that would be about 20 meters, and this is approximate. But to get more precise, for example, and just to keep things simple, we're going to in depth more. Uh, when you're making up a dipole, let's say, for example, you want something on the 7.1 megahertz band or 7100 kilohertz. Uh, now, what would what would you do with that? Well, there's a pretty simple formula here, and if you have your calculator, Joy, what I like you to do,
Yep.
and it is to memorize. You can memorize, or we can memorize this formula. We can, and also there's plenty of calculators, online calculators, but this is just good to know. Take a number that came up with an interesting number for a number of reasons, and again, we're just keeping it simple. for right now. We're getting into the in depth of why they came up, but it's 468. 468. Now you're going to take this 468 and you're going to divide it by the frequency that you want to operate on, a given frequency that you come up with. So let's say 468 divided by 7.15 megahertz, and you tell me what you come up with.
That's 65.45454545454545.
Okay. And since for US, generally we do things in feet here, so that would be 65.45 feet or 65 feet. So that would be the length of a half wave dipole. And remember, as we discussed earlier, is that antennas usually are the most efficient in quarter, half wave length, 5/8. Sometimes we have 3/8. Wavelength in the quarter, wavelength in the half, anything but a wavelength. And but generally, a dipole is a half wavelength long, and usually, again, I'm giving it in feet here, but of course, you can convert that into meters. Now, what do you come up with for that when you convert that to meters? Tell me what you have.
How do we convert to meters?
And I think that formula should be, I think you divide it by 3.28. I could be off on that.
3.2.
And with
That's
I
19.95.
think, yeah. So yeah, that's about right. So half wavelength, remember, they consider 7 megahertz to 40 meter wavelength.
Mhm.
Again, the physical wavelength, if you can see it, is 40 meters long. If you can see this wavelength, is 40 meters long.
Yeah.
But a half wavelength of that is 20 meters. And did you see what you came up with? 19.9
Yes. 95.
meters.
Yeah.
So you can convert. So I go with meters because, of course, that's the more, depending on what country and, persons are more familiar with meters. But in terms of feet, I do recommend that if you can use the formula for feet, because again, you get down, it's, just a little bit more accuracy. Now, that's theoretical. Of course, that's the formula. And so when you put up your dipole, your coax and your dipole there, now you get to test it. In theory, that's where that antenna will we call resonate at resonate. So that's the ideal, will be most efficient generally at that given length and frequency. But in practicality, there's a few other factors that come into play. Different various objects around the antenna as well, terrain and other factors. So that could be off. So a lot of times there's the formula, as I said. Now, if we go back, 468 divided by 7.1, you came up with 66 feet. So now you hang your antenna up, and now remember, a full wavelength or a half wavelength is 66 feet. So if you divide that by 2, you come up with 33 feet per side.
Side.
So you have one wire that's 30 feet, 33 feet this way, 33 feet the other way. That's the simplest dipole that you can put up. But it would be what we call a rookie mistake to cut your antenna exactly to that length. Because again, you have other factors that come into play. So maybe you'll go a foot longer or two. So maybe instead of 33, you do 34 on each side. And then when you hang it up, you do your measurements as the your, and you get to see where's that. Because as you do your adjustments uh, and your SWR measurements, um, it's easier to trim off a couple inches on each side of the dipole. And that's actually how it's done. You actually have to really cut until you find the frequency that you want to operate on. And as opposed to cutting your antenna too short and then having to add, um, a length onto that. And I did that recently. I'll get into that later, but I did that rookie mistake, not because, of course, I knew better, but it was out of impatience that I said, what, I'm just going to do this and cut this amount. And then I had to end up adding in the end. So very simply, let's try another exercise. Let's say you want to put up a dipole for the 14 megahertz band. Let's say 14, you want to do your center frequency at 14.250. So based on the formula, and we're going to do this in feet, of what I gave you, 468, what do you come up with?
32.8.
Okay, 32.8. Now, 32.8 is the uh, full length of the half-wave dipole. Now, what would each leg be of the dipole if you came up with 32.8 then, based on what we discussed earlier? What would each leg be? Remember,
Divided by
what
2.
we do. Excellent. Divide it by 2. So let's divide that by 2. What do you come up with?
16.4.
16.4. So each leg of the dipole would be about 16.4 feet. And again, and approximately that length. And you just maybe want to make it a little bit longer, just in case. Again, there's other factors, but again, this what it is on paper and what it is actual sometimes varies. But you will get within your given band and frequency, and you can make fine adjustments to your a dipole. And so it will be 16.4 feet each side of that of the. Now I have a vertical antenna. I was going to get into that later, but just as a matter of fact, a quarter wavelength of that is I have 17 feet out there. The formula said 16.4 feet, but mine, works just a little bit,
Longer.
needs a little bit more length based on the surroundings and the terrain. So those are just very, very simply, and you could come up with a given frequency yourself. And we'll do one more exercise now. Here's something. Let me see, 468. Let's do the 2-meter band
Yeah, the BHF.
and see what we come up with. Let's do VHF. We'll do, what was it, 468 divided by, let's say, 145? That's the center of the
Yeah,
VHF
145
band.
is good. It's going to be
Okay.
3.22.
Okay. So the full length, basically, of your dipole, as you see, is 3 feet. And that's a given factor when you in the FM commercial world, 88 to 108, it's within that range. But for amateur radio, the average would be 3 feet or 1 meter long. Now, if you divide that by 2, each leg is
1.6.
1.6 feet.
roughly.
So
Yeah.
that's how, right. So that's how you come up with a simple dipole for your
Mm.
uh, 2 meter
Antenna.
you can
Yeah.
antenna that you can build. And
Yeah.
so any, each leg of that would be. So, we were going to, I think everyone can visualize this without a chart. Maybe next week we're just put up a
Yes,
quick one
please.
for review. And so we can visualize that. But so you get
That's
the,
great.
the gist of that exercise. So was that, hopefully that wasn't too much. I think that was simple enough to
Yeah,
do. It's just,
it's
in
simple
that
enough,
case, it's simple math.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as you're good in math, there's a calculator. But I'm just trying to figure out what is 468. By the way, sir, W3 ZQZ.
That would be the factor you use, and I was going to get into that later on
Okay.
about that. But they came up with that term here as regards, um,
Standard.
with the speed of light. And what happens
Mm,
is that a common number for the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. And of course, as we know, the radio waves travel at that same frequency. So, they multiplied 186,000 per second. That's 5.280 feet per second, equals 984 million. Then they divide 184 million feet by 1 million, and they come up with this wavelength calculation.
okay.
And I can go through all of that
Thanks.
there, but by the time you get to that, you come down to 468. Now, really, it's 492, but there's other
Mhm.
factors that are to affect the velocity of propagation, the effect of conductors going through the wire, and this is what the number that is used. Some persons, when dealing with inverted V's, they prefer to use 450. I just talked to someone that had that, but that's been the general formula for decades now for coming up with dipoles, and it's proven to be very accurate for
Mhm.
that. So again, it's
Great.
the formula based on, again, the speed of light, the speed of radio waves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
Mhm.
after a number of calculations, they came up with that
468.
given
Okay.
number. Okay,
Yeah, that's good.
so
So,
that's it. And also the lithium meters as well. Just so that if you want to do meters, I believe that's 150. So 150 divided by 7.2 megahertz gives you 20.8 meters. There's a little slight difference in that. Um, and then if you put in other factors, it comes down a little bit. But there's a formula if you prefer meters. But I strongly recommend feet as better when you're calculating the length of the antenna.
okay. Yeah, that's uh, how do you say this? What a learning curve. Uh, I've
Hmm.
seen how this formula works now. The 468, 186K lightning speed. Whatever. Next time we'll discuss about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I
how
can.
you?
We'll break it down to how we get to
Yeah,
468, and then a lot of times most amateurs like, okay, I'll just take the number and divide, and that's it. But
yeah.
after a number of calculations, going from the speed of radio waves and light, which after that and 4 or 5 calculations bring you down to that number
Okay.
as well.
Yeah. Just to ask, amateur question. When you say antennas, like it's just the antenna, right? If you we mentioned before 19.9 feet, right? So end to end is 19 point feet, and then we're going to leave a little bit room, like 1 foot and 1 foot to the other side,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
when
I
we
wish we could.
cover your
Right. And
yeah.
what we really should have did for our audience, we might do next time, is to be able to pull up a diagram, a simple picture of a
Yes, yes,
dipole,
yeah,
and but then again, you can visualize this of again
yes,
a piece of coaxial cable in the center, one wire, 19 this way,
yeah. A wire like
and
this,
the other, yeah, right, very
yes,
simple,
this,
a dipole,
then it's
and
straight
eh,
like
straight,
this.
and then right in the center.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but when you're again new to the hobby, you might find yourself, uh, taking up and down the antenna,
Hmm.
just to make fine adjustments and to make it, each antenna is cut for a given frequency.
Yes,
Um, and in that state, um, it's at a certain resonant frequency, and then you don't need the antenna tuner actually,
hmm,
and that at that given frequency, including the transmission line, if everything else is correct, if it's no line radiation, maybe an RF choke to keep the um, coaxial cable from radiating at that frequency, um, and you should have the lowest SWR. So you should have the lowest reflected power coming back from the transmitter, and at that point, most of all your power is going out to the antenna. So that's why we come up with this here. That's why when you have transmit on a certain frequency or band, we we don't just throw up a random length of wire and expect everything to come together. There's a number of factors. Although you can do that, um, and there's some tricks to that, but generally for and that's for a single band. Later on, we're getting to multi-band antennas that you can work
yes,
on various bands. But we looked at a number of bands. We looked at different frequencies, VHF, and that's how you come up with these various lengths of antenna. And it's the simplest antenna that you can put together. Again, with simple number 14 wire would be recommended. You can go even thinner than that, depending on how many watts your transmitter is. But anything up to 100 watts, I would just recommend put up number 14. It can be stranded or solid. Stranded might be recommended in windy conditions and things moving around, as opposed to one solid wire that, under certain circumstances, can
yes.
operate. Okay, and
Okay.
later on, we discuss shortened dipoles because, again, not jumping ahead, but just know that for each given frequency that you want to transmit on, there's a given formula for that, and so forth. So, and I just gave you something for each one for each band. And any more questions on
Maybe next time, yeah, just to give our audience, a diagram maybe next time, so that they can really appreciate what we're talking about, But for me,
Mhm.
I fully understand, the formulas of this, the 468 divided by the frequency that you're gonna use, and then I think a lot of audience
Mhm.
will ask because they wanted to have all in one, like 40 meters or 20 meters or 10 meter or 2 meter band, what are those typical antennas that they can use, so that they don't
Mhm.
have to every time they will change the frequency, they will have to cut it or something like that. So I think next time we're going to discuss about that.
Yeah, yeah. Generally speaking, when getting the cutting, you're talking about a single band antenna, and a lot of amateur radio operators, quite a few, not all, get into bands that they're very comfortable operating with. Some do 4 or 5 bands uh, over the month. Some are just happy they're comfortable doing their 7 megahertz 14 and maybe v UHF VHF and 100 2 meter band, and I find here that the locally the 7 megahertz is popular for HF, 14 you can hear for DX, and due to our solar cycle, that's slowly getting better. But right now, the rest of the bands are not doing that good in the HF. So we definitely have a chart and just review what we did discuss here. But I think everyone can kind of visualize what
Yes.
more or less what they have to do, especially those who have been in the relatively new, been in the hobby for a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Our how do you say this? The old timer. Yeah. They can understand that.
Yeah, because I was trying to get you and I should have did that to pull up a dipole antenna here because you probably can pull it up quicker on your computer of a image of that, and there's plenty of them actually. If you
Mhm.
Google dipole antenna,
Yeah.
and that's what I would recommend is that persons just Google that dipole antenna, and then they have a good idea of really the most popular antenna that is used in I would say amateur radio is the dipole and the um, vertical, and those are some of the basic uh, antennas that are used for um, and again very effective in the work here of doing that. So uh, all right, Joey. So
Okay.
next week, let's say we're touch on we'll review that. We'll just put
Yes.
up 1 or 2 diagrams, and uh, and then we'll move on to another the type of antenna and maybe some other formulas. Uh,
Okay. So again, thank you very much, Sir W3ZQZ, Sir
okay,
James, for that wonderful formulas that you've
I don't, I don't,
shown
I,
us.
I,
Go ahead.
yeah, I don't see too much blood, so far so good.
It's okay. I have my cell salvage here.
That's it. You have your teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cell salvage. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sir James. You want to say
Okay.
shout out or thanks to some?
Again, this just thanks to all for their support and those behind the scenes, and of course we're looking to for a few here we haven't seen in a while. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
our other contributors pop back on
Yes.
every once in a while. But thanks for having me, and uh, hopefully after this you'll still continue to have me as
Yes.
a host to do that because this ain't really hard. There's some other formulas there that really get deep, but for that one there, it's just easy division, more or less, to come up.
All right. So thank you again, Sir James W3ZQC, for that insight again, that formula. So we hope next week we will show some diagrams about it and everything. So we're looking forward again, Sir James. Again, thank you very much, Sir James.
Okay. All right. Have a good one, Joe.
Okay, so that's Sir James W3ZQZ. Talk about the formulas of antennas. And I hope you learn something in our discussion. I hope you didn't get sleep because I don't. It's pretty interesting discussion, how, especially those that wanted to do the DIY. And because Sir James is already at the backstage, maybe we can talk in Tagalog right now. Because I think I only have one cup of blood left. Yon! Yun naman pala, pwede naman pala, oh. Yun, oh. So, again, maraming salamat po, Sir James W3ZQZ for that antenna formulas. At yun po, mga ka-Tri Nation, marami ho sana kayong natutunan doon sa discussion nga natin. Ano? Ayan, so yung mga mahilig mag-DIY dyan, ayan, yung mga nagsisimula, ayan, yan po yung, ano lang yan, mga glimpse lang po, ano, nung mga training ni Sir James, ano. Kung gusto niyo po ng in-depth pa, syempre, nandiyan naman po si Google. Ayan, meron din po yung YouTube. Ayan. So pwede po kayong mag-check dyan. Alam niyo naman ang DIY world, trial and error yan. Ano? Kaya lalo na sa mga nag-ham radio, syempre yung error, yung margin of error dapat konti lang. Kaya nga tayo merong mga formulas. Ayan. So yun po. No? So maraming salamat again. At syempre, sa susunod na mga pagkakataon o mga episode, pag-usapan po naman natin yung mga iba't ibang klase nung, although na pag-usapan na natin dati, no? Pero maganda din na ma-review natin, ano? Yung mga antennas na yan, kamukha nung tanong ko kanina kay Sir James, ano? Ayan. So again, maraming salamat. So syempre, meron po tayong featured ham radio for today. Ayan, kilala niyo po ba ang featured ham operator natin for today? Walang iba po kundi si Sir 4H1 LMP o si Sir Limps Peñano. Sir 4H1 LMP or Sir LMP, please come in. Yon. Hello, Sir Limps. Magandang
Yes,
hapon
sir.
po sa inyong 2-0.
Yes, sir. BB1, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat at sa ating mga ka-Tri Nation.
Yon. So maraming salamat po sa pagkapaunlak ninyo, Sir LMP, sa pagkakataon po itong ma-interview kayo sa ating segment. Pero bago po tayo dumako sa mga tanong, alamin lang po natin na 2-0 nga po, Sir.
Sir, malapit lang. Dito lang sa Lingayen, Pangasinan.
Nakaw, kalapit
kami
pala. Yon. So, kamusta na ba yung mga bangus natin dyan, Sir?
Ayos po. Kapag ka hindi nahuhuli, medyo nalulunod ng konti.
Kailangan ma-harvest na yan. At namimiss ko na
sir.
yung, sabi nga nila, ano ba yun? Yung bunuan ba yun? Yung masarap na bangus o may mas masarap pa doon?
Yes, sir. Bunuan po. Bunuan.
Yun, makikipagbuno tayo sa ulo niyan pagka naiihaw natin yan o kaya nasinigang natin yan. Yun.
Yes po.
Yun. So, Sir Lima, Mama, Papa, no? Dumako po tayo doon sa ating mga questions. Ano? Ayan. Bakit po kayo nag-invest ng radio unit at saan niyo po ito gagamitin, sir?
Yes po. Yung sa pag-invest, kung bakit, ay mahalaga kasi ito sa kagaya namin ng mga nagbo-volunteer. No? Kasi kapag panahon ng mga disaster, panahon ng mga kalamidad, karamihan po ng mga cell site, mga cellphone na gamit natin ay down. So, isa ito sa dahilan kung bakit kami nag-invest ng radio para mabilis yung communication. At kung saan ito gagamitin ay malimit at hindi lang malimit, talagang sa pagbo-volunteer po namin ito ginagamit itong radio naming in-invest.
Yun, thank you very much po. Talaga namang essential. Sabi nga, yun yung madalas kong naririnig sa ating mga panauhin, ano, napaka-essential ng radio unit. Dumako po tayo dun sa pangalawang tanong, paano po kayo natulungan ng radio, Sir LMP?
Ay, opo, malaking tulong itong radio sa ating mga volunteer kasi kapag halimbawa kapag tayo ay proceed na doon sa area ng operation, hindi mo na kailangan na mag-dial pa, hindi mo na kailangan na magpipindot pa doon sa
Cellphone.
hawak mo, cellphone. So dito talagang malaking tulong ito at yung reliable ng information, mabilis, tsaka eksakto, hindi mo na kailangang hintayin pa or hintayin mo pa mag-reply. Napakalaking tulong nito kapag may mga operation sa pagbo-volunteer. Talagang maaasahan itong mga radio na ginagamit natin.
Ayan, so instant communication pala sa iyong side. Ayan, thank you very much. Yung huli at pangatlong tanong po natin, ano po ba yung inyong mga radio units na ginagamit dyan? At kamusta po yung mga performance ng mga malulupit na mga radyo nyo dyan, Sir Limps?
Ay, opo. Ang gamit ko sa portable, meron akong ICOM na B80. Medyo mahinang klase lang naman. So, ito yung aking ginagamit. Yung paborito natin kasi malinaw siya. Talagang napakagandang gamitin. Oo. At pati yung audio niya, napakaganda. So, meron din akong Signos na ito yung maliit na ginagamit. Ang maganda nito ay mura, tapos mabilis i-charge, tapos meron din akong extended battery na pang UP. Kahit na medyo matagal, hindi basta-basta nalulubat. Meron din tayong pang worldwide, sir. BB1. Pang worldwide po ito. Ang pagkakaiba lang nito ay sa internet po ginagamit. Hindi mo may tatawag pag wala kang internet. Pero ang maganda, walang limit ang signal na kahit na sa ibang bansa pwede mong makontak. Sa sasakyan, meron akong base, yung XT818 na Signos, yung may license. Tapos meron din po yung ICOM na 2300 sa base po.
Wow. So, na-testing nyo na po ba, Sir Lims, kung gaano kalayo yung nararating ng mga radio units po ninyo?
Yes po. Malimit kong natitesting kapag lalong-lalo na kapag pumupunta ako dyan sa inyong mga location. So kapag sa mobile base ko ginagamit, malayo po eh. Pag pupunta ako dyan, bumabato ako. Minsan nasa parte ako ng Bulacan. Minsan wala pa sa Bulacan, Pampanga. Abot na ito. So pag dito sa amin, medyo malawak din ang range kasi wala masyadong mga building na sumasangga. Wala masyadong matataas sa mundo. Kaya malawak po pag dito sa lugar namin ang dating nitong mga radio communication natin.
Yun. So, ang galing pala ng iyong unit, So, siguro ang pumipick up sa'yo si Bravo Base. Tama ba, Sir Limps?
Yes po. Sila po. Lalo kapag last week, yun, Manila, habang papunta dyan, minomonitor nila ako. Kaya kung minsan hindi ako makapagsabi na palapit na ako, pero talagang minomonitor nila.
Tama, yun. Oo. Siyempre, surprise pa minsan-minsan. Ayun. So, maraming salamat po, Sir Lims, At may gusto ka po bang batiin o pasalamatan o i-plug?
Yes po. Maraming salamat po, Sir BB1, sa pagkakataon na makapag-share sa inyong show. Kagalakan ko po na ma-share sa inyong show ang aking mga units. At sa mga kasama namin, kumusta kayo dyan? Ingat kayo lagi. Lalong-lalo na ngayon, medyo maulan-ulan, maambon-ambon kahit dito sa amin. Ingat lang kayo lagi. Sa mga ka-Tri Nation, invest kayo ng radio. Magagamit natin ito lalo ngayon ay palala yung mga disaster na dumarating. So magagamit natin ito. Maraming salamat po.
Yun. So maraming salamat po again, Sir Limps, 4H1 LMP. Ayan. So sa iyong pagka narito at napaunlakan niyo po yung yung aming imbitasyon, ano. So sa mga susunod po ay invite po namin ulit kayo, no? At syempre kailangan nakahanda na yung bangos at saka yung yung putong bilog na maliit.
Yes po.
Yun.
Ihanda natin yan. Puto kalasyaw.
Yon, photo ka lang siya. Ayan. So again, maraming salamat po, Sir Limps. Wag po kayong alis, Try Nation. Babalik po kami.
Hello mga ka-try.
So welcome back mga ka-try. Magandang hapon mga ka-try.
Good morning mga ka-try.
What's up mga ka-try?
Hello mga ka-try.
Magandang gabi sa inyo mga ka-try.
Hello mga ka-try. Hello po mga ka-try.
Mga ka-try.
Magandang hapon po muli, mga ka-Try Nation.
Good morning mga ka-try.
Umaga po sa inyo dito sa programa niyo sa TryPH.
Magandang hapon sa ating lahat mga ka-try.
Uy, magandang araw din sa inyo mga ka-try.
Yes, magandang umaga sa mga taga-subaybay nitong ating bagong programa, TryPH. Napakaganda nito.
Magandang hapon po sa inyo, TryPH Media.
Okay, maraming salamat din sa inyo sa pribilehyo makasama sa inyo.
Happy hapon sa inyong lahat mga ka-try.
Happy hapon mga ka-try.
How far
And how high?
This high.
Never know.
you will never know.
You will never know.
You will never know.
You will never know. You will never know.
You will never know. You will never know.
You will never know.
So you'll never know. You will never know. You will never know. You'll never know. Never know.
Never know.
You'll never know.
You'll never know.
Yan, so welcome back po muli. Ayan, yung ating video ng pasasalamat po sa inyo, Try Nation. Ano? Ayan, so ito na naman, dito naman po tayo nagtatapos sa ating Try to Contact at salamat po muli kay Sir W3ZQZ at kay Sir 4H1 LMP. Ayan, so excuse me po. Ayan. So thank you again, lalo na po doon sa ating mga manonood kay Ma'am Pia Peñano, kay Ma'am Jesh Salvatierra, kay Sir Miguel Carl Jr., kay Raybel Altura, at syempre kay Kapata Elena, ang ating #1 supporter. At ganyan din po, maraming salamat po sa bumubuo ng TryPH Media, at ganoon din po naman ang mga staff at crew, at ganoon din po naman kayo po, Try Nation. Maraming salamat po sa inyong panonood sa ating mga show, sa ating sa mga suporta po ninyo. Maraming salamat po. Siyempre, salamat din po sa ating mga kapamilya, dyan sa Nueva Ecija, at ganoon din po naman yung mga pamilya po natin dyan sa California. Yan. Hello po sa inyong lahat, sa mga Robles family, sa Panahon family, sa Cuevo family. Ayan, hello po sa inyong lahat. Ayan, at of course, sa mga Salvatierra at Fritz family, especially si Sir Andrew. Yan. Okay. So, syempre, dyan na naman po nagtatapos yung ating segment. Salamat din po dun sa ating mga supporters. Banggitin ko na rin. Ayan. Yun. Yung ating mga advocacy partner. Ayan. Yung ating mga platinum partners. Ang RJ Brom, ang Tagaytay Guide, ang Haas, ang Ralph, ang JRM Consulting, ang Calabar Zone. Ayan. At ganun din yung ating mga gold partners, ang Bon Happy Tea, at ang Siopaw ng Bayan, ang Pau de Oro, at ang Bernard Petran Media Group, and promotion, ang Happy Giving Trading Company. Yan, maraming salamat po. Sa Monday po, meron po tayong open house. Ayan. And then sa ating silver partner, ang LMP Auto Care. Yan po yung pag-aari po ni Sir Limps. Kung may mga problema po kayo sa inyong mga kotse, mag-PM lang po kayo sa kanya, no? Si Sir Limps Peñano. Yan. And then ang Purple Whisk, ang life extension. Yan. Kailangan nyo po ng vitamin D3, syempre, para malakas po yung ating immune system panlaban sa mga COVID na yan. And then yung SafeTech, ganoon din po yung Masarap Bakery. Ayan, hindi ko pa natitikman tong masarap eh. Masarap kaya talaga to. Ayan, ang RDY Marine Electronics, Sir RDY. Ayan, namimiss ka na namin. Alpha Lima, Alpha Romeo. Ayan, General Caholo. Ayan, si Gold Charlie. Hello po sa inyo diyang lahat. At syempre, ang pinaka-paborito ko sa lahat, ang Lahoma Funeral Homes. Ayan, sa ganda ng serbisyo. Maganda talaga. Ayan, so dyan na naman po nagtatapos yung ating segment ngayon. At yun po, maraming salamat po muli sa inyo. Magkita-kita po muli tayo sa susunod na linggo. At yung sabi nga po nila you'll never know unless you try. Over and out.
Break, any station come in.
Yung breaker po, go ahead. 11, call sign, sir.
Thank you, sir. This is 4H1 EMQ po. This is EMQ from Amadeo Station, over.
Roger that, acknowledge. This is Alpha Lima, Cavite Station on the mobile.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you give me update lang sa location mo, weather, and working condition mo?
Roger that, acknowledge. So now, ako po ay on mobile, stationary mobile here in Cavite City Public Market. And then, sa ngayon, sobrang init po ng ating weather condition ngayon dito. Napakataas ng humidity level. And working condition ko po is Motorola GM300 with power output of 45 watts. And then, super gainer antenna, over.